Hi there, you're talking trash with Nat. Today I'm putting together just a really quick episode about recycling or the recovery of glass packaging materials from your recycling bin. In 2017, there was a bit of a hubbub about recyclable materials, particularly glass, ending up in landfill because the economics wasn't there to make sure that they could get put back in to producing new glass packaging materials. Now, this was because there was an availability of some very cheap glass materials for packaging. So this was new bottles that were produced in places like China that could be used to package things here in Australia very, very cheaply. Now, this report coming out in the media, I don't know that it had any impact. I'm sure that it probably did because we haven't heard about it in the media a lot since. So I'm going to leave it up to you to make a decision about whether you think that your glass is ending up in the right place. I believe it is, but I haven't seen any solid figures that tell me that it absolutely has ended up in the right place. Now, that isn't to say that there's dodgy people doing dodgy things. I think that, as is usually the case, that there's lots of people trying to do the right thing, but sometimes the economics doesn't work out so well. And in 2017, it was very clear that the price that they needed for the recycling of the glass just wasn't there, and that people were producing glass materials or glass products to package things in very, very cheaply, which was not cool. So I believe that since then the glass price has come up to an appropriate $25 to $30 per tonne, which is good. So one of the things that I thought we should talk about was the actual recycling process, and actually, why is it important that we should recycle glass in the first place? Because it's not a harmful material, and putting that into landfill, what the hey? Well, so that's one of the big savings, is space in landfill. We have actually a very finite number of holes in the ground in our metropolitan areas to fill, and once they're filled, we're going to have to find new, further away places to put things into landfill. So we want to conserve that space as much as possible. And that's why we have the landfill levy, so to try and incentivize people to save on that space. And in 2017, it was actually cheaper for the materials to go into landfill at $138 a tonne just in the levy than it was for them to be recycled, which is very indicative of how cheap those bottles coming in, or those glass packaging items coming in were. So now the other saving in terms of environmental impacts is mining. The virgin materials come from sand and limestone, which have to be mined from somewhere for us to make our virgin materials to make our glass from. So we're saving on mining those materials, which is great. Now, the final component to what savings we're getting out of recycling our glass is actually up to 30% of the energy that it takes to produce the glass items is in heating it up to melt the glass. And when we use recovered glass, it's actually about 30% lower in temperature, the melting point for that glass. So every 10% you get 3% energy savings. So that's actually quite a big saving. So that's great, and that's why we're recycling. So we also need to talk about the recycling process. And much like plastics recycling, like we talked about last week, the glass actually has to be sorted into different colours and types so that it can be recycled into new bottles of those same colours. Just like plastic, the dye can't easily be removed from the glass that colours it. And so if they're not separated, you'll end up with a dark or dirty coloured glass, and that isn't what is desired for the packaging of products. So what we have to do is we have to separate it into different colours of glass. And also it has to be ready to go into the furnace, and so it has to be free of any contaminants, so any dirt or leftover of whatever was in the glass packaging prior to it being recovered. So what happens is the glass is crushed up into what they call cullet, and the byproduct of that process is also glass fines, and we'll talk about those in just a second. But the glass cullet has to be sorted by colour, and some pre-sorting does happen so that the cullet is mostly of one particular colour if possible. So that cullet is sorted, and then it can go and be used in new glass products. Now, what I mentioned before about the glass fines is very interesting. They actually can't be put into the furnace, and they need to be used in some other way. And either this byproduct gets put into landfill, or what can also be used in the production of concrete for construction as a replacement for sand. That is possible. I don't know how often that happens. It's hard to sort of research these things. But the other thing that it can be done with it is definitely it can be used in the production of aggregates for road-based materials or hard-based materials. And this is an area that has been identified that needs to be developed by the industry, but that may not be in common practice at the moment. So this is an area where the government does need to legislate if it wants to start that saving in particular. All right, that's it from me today here at Talking Trash with Nat. If you have any questions, comments, please leave them below. I would love to answer your questions. If you've liked this video, click on the like button, and please, as always, subscribe to this channel. I'm having so much fun answering your questions. I just want to answer more. All right, see you later, guys.